Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, One Piece chapter 1034 is out. If you guys haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. Man, it's been a really long time. You guys could time me, right? You know, you could see the time on the video. I'm just talking now, so I don't know how long the video is going to be, but this might be my first review that is 10 minutes since like forever. If it's not, we'll rip. Well, future JP here, and we did not make it to 10 minutes. The sadness is real. Because honestly, this chapter, I think that there's not too much to discuss. It was a battle chapter with Sanji and Queen. We learned some things were tied off. It's a lot of powers. It's pretty straightforward. But I suppose before we get into Sanji, we have one other scene related to somebody else, and that's Momonosuke. Momonosuke has figured he can't actually create the clouds in order to keep the island floating, so he's decided to drag the clouds that Kaido has already created, because he's also a dragon, and stall the island so that it doesn't go over the flower capital. I really don't know what to make of this in the grand scheme of things, like what's actually accomplished here. So it's a stall tactic. Momonosuke is slowing down the island, prolonging the time that it would take for the island to reach the flower capital, or potentially preventing the island from hovering over the flower capital. But, I mean, realistically, right, we don't know how long it would take for the island to get over the flower capital. So, time is saved here, but the time was such a nebulous thing to begin with. So, Oda could have subtracted this scene, and I don't think that it would have made too much difference if it was just about stalling. So because of this, I like to believe that Oda had some other purpose for this scene other than stalling. One of those, and I've already sort of said this, is Momonosuke is actually able to prevent the flower capital, or the Onigashima, from getting over the flower capital. He's strong enough to do that. It's his sort of, I mean, you could hype it up a little bit, I don't know how much, but, you know, Hour of Legends where Momonosuke is pulling at the island and actually succeeding in saving the flower capital. That would be a way, it seems to me, that this scene would be relevant enough to include. But I don't know. I could be thinking too much about this, but, you know, it just feels like filler to me. It feels like Oda just included a snapshot of what's happening with Momonosuke because he felt like it. We need one scene to establish that Momonosuke hasn't mastered his abilities, but is still trying hard. But I don't really get too much from it. It wasn't that exciting to me. Maybe this will just end up being a sort of theme, right? Where before, Momonosuke was like, I gotta stop the island, he's creating the clouds. Now it's like, okay, that didn't work, now I'm gonna pull at the clouds, and then maybe next time that we come back to him, that won't work either. Maybe that's sort of what Oda had in mind. And maybe this culminates with like a hype moment where Momonosuke demonstrates an unexpected ability that both he and Kaido have that we don't know about that saves the day. I think that would probably, as far as in my imagination, probably be the best way that I could see to handle this. But of course, I'm not Oda, and so Oda might be on another level. But you guys know I really hope that the bomb goes off inside the island. And so any attempts that Momonosuke makes to save the flower capital in that case would be really relevant. Because it would be unfortunate if the bomb went off over the island and all the rubble fell on the island anyway. But we'll see. I'll wait for it. So we then pan to Sanji versus Queen, and the first thing that Queen does is start demonstrating abilities that Sanji's siblings, Germa, had. And he makes this big speech about, yes, I know everything about Judge Vinsmoke and the Vinsmoke tech, and I can do the same thing, but better. You know, the one thing that I really like about this, besides eventually when we get Queen and his history with Judge and how that other things about that that would be relevant to know, I just like that we're finally getting a scene, right, where Sanji is facing against his siblings' powers. People remember from a long time ago, back in Whole Cake Island, I basically died on the hill that Sanji would fight his siblings. I considered that to be important, but that never happened, and now it seems very unlikely to ever happen. But this is one way in retrospect to help justify it, because if Sanji had fought all of his siblings, right, and their powers in an official prolonged battle, so more than just a panel, then Queen having all of this, it would be redundant. So you kind of combine all of their abilities into one enemy. Queen could then demonstrate abilities of the Vinsmoke children that would be surprising, reveals about what other things they could do, techniques they could have. I'm uncertain of how long this battle will continue, if it does continue, but those are the kinds of things that you can do. And spoiler alert, I don't think that Queen is defeated. But one thing I do want to say about this is probably not going to happen. But as I read this, right, Queen demonstrates the abilities of Niji and Ichiji and Yonji, but he doesn't demonstrate the abilities of Reiju. But he says, I know all about the Vinsmoke tech, I can do everything that they can do. But he doesn't show Reiju's ability. So I wonder, or at least it's possible, right, to use this moment as foreshadowing, when later Queen uses Reiju's ability in some way that would be impactful in the story. I mean, poison is just really interesting when you use it. So to not use it here, it could be used. One thing that I think is lacking from this scene, this battle, which I enjoyed, it's such a contrast to Zoro, right? So far, Sanji has it really easy. I mean, there is no sense that Queen is a threat to him at all. We end the chapter with sort of the presumption Oda wants us to believe that maybe Sanji has already defeated Queen. So there's no like, oh, well, Queen is a threat to Sanji. That is not the feeling that you have. So I kind of want this battle to feel more intense. And so it feels more intense by raising the stakes. So you have that in spades with Zoro. There's like a million things that might kill Zoro before or after his battle. So it'd be cool if Queen, just like Reiju, secreted poison or something like that. What effect would that have on Sanji? Would Sanji be immune to that? I don't know, but I don't think so. So then you could leave Sanji, even if this battle continues, right? Poisoned, right? And weaker, just like Zoro. And then even if Sanji does defeat Queen, right? You still have that lingering sense of, there's still other things that need to happen after this, and the crew is dying. If you guys remember, Reiju's abilities are no joke. In Whole Cake Island, she only used her poison abilities really once, and it was against Smoothie, who could wring the poison out, so her Devil Fruit directly countered Reiju. But in a circumstance that wouldn't be exactly that, right? She's a problem. So her abilities would be a problem. And as far as we know, and I believe this is confirmed, but it may not be, they are a result of tech, which Queen should already know. But like I said, I'm not expecting this to happen. This is just speculating out loud, but it adds an element into this that I would want. Because right now I would say the big thing about this fight that I don't like is exactly what I said. It's Sanji is just whooping. He's whooping Queen right now. And while there's something to be said for Sanji has been trashed throughout the entirety of the New World, so maybe he needs a fight like this. That there's an argument to be made there. But for me personally, with the context of the battle against Kaido and his crew, I want it to feel like more intense. So I'm really curious how eventually Oda accomplishes that with Sanji in particular. Like, we understand Luffy, we understand Zoro, most of the rest of the crew, we get it, okay, the threat to them is imminent, but what is the threat that Queen poses to Sanji, so that this battle will feel like it has tension? And I suppose this relates to the other thing about this chapter, which in the moment here, I don't really appreciate. So a couple chapters ago, we had the scene where it appeared as though that Sanji might have hit a woman while not aware. And so Oda resolved this very quickly, and most people's opinions about it were correct, that Sanji didn't hit a woman. Because it was actually Queen going invisible, and he just has a thing against prostitutes, which mistreat him on a regular basis. He's a horn dog, they don't like him, they make excuses, and then he gets mad, which is apparently what happened. Which, by the way, makes me hate Queen a lot. But is also just generally annoying and also not a good way. Like, bro, man, you were in the middle of dealing with Sanji and you're like, oh, look, there's a prostitute. Let me just hit her real fast because why not? I don't know how I feel about that. Even for a villain, it's almost too contrived for that fake out with Sanji earlier, which now you look back, it's like, how much do I enjoy this scene now? Did it really pay off waiting 3 chapters or 2 chapters, whatever it was? Honestly, what I was hoping for, besides Sanji having some sort of alter ego or the raid suit transforming his personality, which would be incredibly hype, but what I was hoping for, logically, right, Sanji probably didn't hit a woman, so there's a long time between when Sanji thinks that he might have done that, and then he finds out that he didn't. And in the middle there, you can have lots of internal conflict and, you know, just emotions. Like, a lot could be accomplished with just more time between when it happened and when the truth is revealed. But we got 3 chapters. Honestly, I can't help but feel de-hyped, because when the scene first happened, there was so much to be excited for. Like, was the raid suit actually changing Sanji's personality? Was that some sort of battle that Sanji would have to overcome? Or was it something else entirely? I feel like the answer, even though Queen had the invisibility powers, was underwhelming. But at the same time, I think that Oda's kind of lulling us to sleep here by suggesting, oh look, the mystery of hitting the woman or whatever is resolved. Don't think about that anymore. I still think that there's things that Oda could do. I feel like the biggest thing that Oda accomplishes by revealing the mystery of who hit the woman now is you've totally forgotten about what we were thinking about at the time. The big thing that was bothering Sanji was that he felt like he might be transforming into a Vinsmoke. Remember, he had that conversation with Zoro. It's like, at the end of this battle, you know, if I don't seem like myself, then kill me. The thing which embodied this idea was Sanji hitting a woman. That represented Sanji becoming somebody he didn't want to be. So as it is revealed who did it now, most likely most people are not even thinking about this plot line anymore. Like, oh, is Sanji going to transform into a Germa? Is he going to lose his emotions? It's not a thought, and that's what this scene accomplishes. But I thought that it was really clever on Oda's part, right? That Queen represents all of the siblings put together. And what did the siblings do back on Whole Cake Island? They hit a woman, and Sanji hated it. Well, what is Queen doing now? He's hitting a woman. Furthering the progression here, the connection that Queen represents all of the children put together. Also, we were just talking about the parallels pre and post time skip a couple of reviews ago, and so I'm presuming that the people watching this have watched that review too, but it's a concept where, you know, something happened in the pre-time skip and Oda reuses it and escalates it, progresses it, changes it in some significant way in the post-time skip. Well, Queen clearly is an escalation of Sanji's fight against Absalom in Thriller Bark. Absalom had invisibility powers, so does Queen. Absalom secretly used them to try and get married with Nami, and Queen secretly uses his invisibilities to hit a woman. Escalation. Both of them have weirdly deformed bodies, but for different reasons. But they both used tech. And one of the main things from the Absalom fight was how jealous Sanji was that Absalom had invisibility powers, which Sanji wanted more than anything else. That was his childhood dream. And in this fight, we just come from a moment in which Sanji destroyed his invisibility powers because of what he thought it did to him. But also potentially he unlocked new ones with super speed. So, I mean, he might use that as a form of invisibility, I guess. But you guys see the connections. The connections are there. But anyway, the main takeaway from the chapter, as it relates to future chapters, is Sanji's enhancements. We find out now what it really means for Sanji to, his body to change. And he is now super strong and so fast that it resembles invisibility. And on top of this, in addition to his hockey training, he can now produce flames of greater heat. I feel like I'm being a negative Nancy about this chapter, and I definitely don't think that this is a great chapter. This isn't a 10 out of 10 by any stretch of the imagination. But this is another thing that I think is worthy of criticizing. What's exciting about transformations, in my opinion, comes from like the artisticness of it. So, for instance, back in Water 7, when Sanji showcased for the first time his fire leg techniques, it's really cool because it's something that is visually different. It's visually interesting to see drawn. This isn't just true for Sanji, this is true for literally everyone. Like, all of Luffy's technique Oda adds some sort of visual element to them which make them hype and spark your imagination. In Gear 2nd, there's steam pouring off of him. In Gear 3rd, and a limb is really big. Gear 4th, he's Bound Man, and his form is completely different. When Zoro demonstrates a hype new technique, the way that it is drawn is different. Like, for instance, Ashura, right? It's like, that is hype because it's not just Zoro standing there with his sword. There's an aura around him, which is cool. Cool here, obviously, being a nebulous and vague and subjective thing, but that's how I feel. It's not just words on a page where Zoro does an attack and his opponent is like, wow, you cut even better now. I am more sliced up than I would have been otherwise. Like when you can only understand that something is better because it is explained via words, it doesn't hit as hard as, like, for instance, Sanji's entire body becomes a demon or something. Like even before, right, when Robin turned into the devil or whatever that was, like, those are the hype power-ups in my opinion. And so Sanji's power-up here is like Sanji before but stronger. It's like you kind of hope for something else. That isn't to say that Sanji won't demonstrate some other ability, but what we actually get in the chapter is, well, Sanji is faster, Sanji is stronger, and his flames are hotter. But like, in terms of what we actually see, there's really no difference. I thought it was interesting though that Oda kind of walked back a thing that he said in an SBS a long time ago. A person asked Oda, nice to meet you, I finally sent you a postcard, it's a serious question so give me a real answer. That trick that Sanji used to beat Jabra, if it was that hot to Jabra, wouldn't it burn Sanji too? And Oda says, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Are those eyes or holes in your head? What were you watching in that fight? His leg is hot? No, it's not hot. Sanji's heart was burning so much hotter. Well, in this chapter we learn that Sanji's leg is actually hot and it does actually burn him. Because he says, his words not mine, if I pair the exoskeleton protection with my armament hockey training, my legs should be able to stand flames much hotter than before. This is a new reveal that the heat of Sanji's leg was dependent on what Sanji himself could stand. It also suggests that he could have made his flame hotter, but it would damage him. Guys, so here's my theory about the conclusion of the fight, right? We're led to believe that Sanji is facing no threat from Queen whatsoever. He just beat Queen, pretty much, and we're moving on. I think that the twist here, what will make this chapter even more satisfying in a couple weeks, or next chapter, whenever we get back to this fight, is when we learn that Sanji is not actually as powerful as he thinks that he is in this moment, or he should be. There's a really interesting ... You guys know I read into all the ... but Sanji is literally pummeling Queen with attack after attack after attack. He's so mad, supposedly. But in the middle of all this, Queen is just, he has a ... panel. Which in context of what's taking place makes me believe that Sanji isn't hurting Queen as much as we're led to believe. A theory that I was discussing with somebody else over the last couple weeks is, what is the effect of Sanji's eyebrows turning the other way? Right? That's another thing that almost everybody has forgotten, but Sanji's eyebrows literally turned the other way to resemble his siblings. And so at the time, what we discussed at the time was that this was an indication that Sanji was losing his emotions, that by his eyebrows flipping the other way, it tells us that there's an actual transformation taking place for Sanji. He is actually losing his emotions. Well, let's reread what Oda said in an SBS. Were you watching that fight? His leg is hot? No, it's not hot. Sanji's heart was burning so much hotter. We've seen this throughout the stories. We have a million speculations about how Sanji's powers work, how Diable Jambe, his fire leg, works, but almost all of them come to Sanji's emotions. Sanji uses his emotions, his heart is burning, which makes his leg burn. There's been other scenes, such as when Nami is in danger, Sanji isn't actually fighting anyone, that his entire body combusts. And it was meant to be a joke, but now we kind of consider that more serious, like, oh, this is foreshadowing of what Sanji can do. Sanji's emotions, his burning hot, is triggering the flames. Or, as Oda suggests here, well, the flames don't burn Sanji because his heart burns so much hotter. So if his heart stopped burning as quite as hot, then the flames that he could produce would equally be weaker. Or he would begin to burn himself. I think that a lot of people would read this chapter and be like, oh, well, clearly this is the case because Sanji uses his ability just fine. But he's still in the process of transforming. So we have this big scene of Sanji's like, yes, my fire leg should be stronger now because of this reason and this reason. But it could be that the reveal next time that we come back to the fight is it's not stronger. It's not stronger because Sanji's Diable Jambe is losing its effectiveness because Sanji's heart is turning to ice, which is the exact wording that Queen used a few chapters ago when describing Sanji transforming into his siblings. You're about to have a heart of ice. You guys see what I was saying here? Like, the reason why Sanji's flames don't burn him, Oda says, is because Sanji's heart burns so much hotter. Well, if his heart turns to ice, he becomes a Vinsmoke, then the flames should burn him. Unless Oda walks back what he said before, and in this case, I really don't think so. So that's my expectation for the next time we come back to the fight. It's maybe to see the effects of this. I hope so anyway, because that would make this scene even better. And again, as I said before, it would add the drama, the stakes, the tension to this fight that I think that it needs. But even if this isn't true, I still 100% expect that Queen isn't defeated. I mean, like, we've walked through this path before. Earlier during Onigashima, right, we were like, time and time again, Page 1 and Ulti are defeated, and they weren't. And the reason that they weren't defeated is because they're ancient zones. You know, the one ability that I can definitively say that these Devil Fruits possess is high amounts of endurance. Ulti took a direct attack from Big Mom and got back up. Regardless of how strong Sanji is right now, is he dishing out damage on the same level as Big Mom? Press X for doubt. It cannot be that easy for Sanji to KO Queen. And quite honestly, what I'm expecting is at some point in time we presume that all of these enemies are defeated, but remember, they are all ancient zones. So even if they were, I think that they won't be down for very long. And that could be another uh-oh moment, where everyone has won their individual fights, they're waiting for Luffy to win his, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait a second, we haven't defeated our enemies yet, and we're all dying. I hope for something like that. The you thought you won, but you actually didn't moment. But anyway, this was such a weird chapter, because I think the primary appeal of it is if you're a Sanji fan and you just want him to go off, because that's what he did. But at the same time, it took away a lot of things too, like we were hyped about, well, did he hit a woman or not? The answer wasn't really satisfying to me. There's other things like, oh, maybe Sanji can go invisible now. Oh no, it's just super speed, which is, I guess, kind of similar, but not quite as exciting to me, again, personally. Although you best believe I'm excited for the DBZ sound effects when it comes to the anime. He shows off the new abilities that he got from transforming, but they look just like his old abilities. Queen shows off what he can do, but it doesn't really have any impact on Sanji whatsoever. And overall, the chapter makes it feel like this isn't much of a fight at all, and I want it to feel like a fight. It's a chapter that leaves me wanting more, and I think that we can get more from this point, but it necessitates, at the very least, Queen not being defeated. But at the very least, I definitely want to see the thing about Sanji's emotions come back up and be relevant and feel important again, because it doesn't. But anyway, guys, as always, we stay patient, we wait, and let's see what happens. As always, I'm curious as to what you guys think, whether you know something from the chapter that I might have missed. Just share your thoughts. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you dislike the video, subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content, and as always, guys, have a wonderful day.